Hello and welcome to Village Church Sermon Q&A. Pastor Craig here with Pastor Michael and Pastor Alex. We did a message yesterday on what it means to be a good neighbor. So we're going to discuss a little bit about what that means in practical terms today. So the first question goes to Pastor Michael. Woo-hoo. And here's your question, Pastor Michael. Why is there an Old Testament law about boiling a goat in its mother's milk?
Have you ever had the impulse to boil a goat or to boil any animal in its mother's milk?
Occasionally I think about it.
It was a regular temptation.
Yeah, right? It's one of my favorite things about laws, and when you really start reading through Old Testament laws, they're actually hilarious when you think about them through the lens that every law, there was somebody tempted to do that thing.
Yep.
So there's like enough people, hear this, this command shows up 3 times in Torah, in the law, 3 separate times. And I'm thinking to myself, like, in what world is somebody tempted to do this? So apparently they live in a very different culture, a very different time. And
Maybe they know something we don't.
Right, let's just read the verse here. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Okay, now questions like come from this, which is, what is the goat alive? Is the mother watching the goat, you know? So we had, it was interesting yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever day this is. We were cleaning out my shed and you know those flower pots, they're plastic and there's like, you put little flowers in them and there's like 16 of them, they're all in rows. Well, there was one on a shelf and I'm cleaning all this out and I pick up, there's something on top of it. I pick it up and this little mother mouse goes, ooh, looks around, goes down and I scream. And my wife, who is petrified of mice, she screams back. What was it? Is it alive? Is it big? like she's barraging with questions. And I'm just thinking like, okay, so I'm thinking, all right, so I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing in. So as I empty out the mouse, okay, there are 7 babies attached to it. Word. Right, this got real. Then I screamed again. And all my kids now are watching and they're like, what is it? And I'm like, you can't see this. Yeah. No. And then they are insistent, like absolutely 100% insistent. We have to see this. So I show it to them and my daughters are like, we have to keep all of them.
Oh my
goodness. No. And so now I got these little girls with their mom instinct kicking in. I got this little mama mouse and who is obviously built an entire home for like all of her mice. And we live by wood. So we go out, we dig a hole. We're trying to like recreate like a home for them. And as we gently put the mice into this whatever, and they're all still attached. It was like a really traumatic whatever. But then it was so interesting because when the mother mouse was in the bucket, she was gathering all of her little mice babies around her. And just watching even just this animal's maternal instincts to protect her babies at all cost was really striking. And then when we put them in there, she started to run off and then half of them were attached to her and a couple of them fell off. And she is now having this tension. The reason I say this is because the maternal instinct is powerful all throughout creation. And all of my kids had this dilemma, like, what do we do with this? Like everything about what we're doing is unnatural. Like it was a violation of everybody. And I even felt guilty. I'm like, do I just like let these mice live? I mean, they're going to destroy my shed. They're going to get into my house and then they're going to get trapped anyways, you know, like all these quandaries. And so it's interesting. I know you're like, I have no issues.
I don't see what the problem is here.
No. Yeah. This whole thing is about being a good neighbor, and you're just saying you just let a whole colony of mice
into the woods
in your neighborhood.
Into the woods.
Way to go. So
it's good.
My point in saying that is that like
dying to hear.
Okay, so my point in saying that is like there is something very unnatural, right? Very broken about taking anything living, right, and taking its baby and then boiling. But so it's interesting when you look at this on the surface. If you just take a moment and think about it, it is dark, unnatural, and it's actually just a terrible thing to do that to an animal. And God has actually a lot of like protection over animals. Now, take this another level. Apparently, Canaanite religions were known for doing this. So like, why would they do this? So here's what we do know about a lot of them. Part of their ritual sacrifice was to take their firstborn, put it onto a big bronze statue, I think it was of a calf, lit on fire and incinerate their baby live in front of everybody as an offering to the gods. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do if you don't have a baby? Oh, I know. I'll take a baby goat, boil it in its mother's milk, and maybe that'll do it. You know, like the kind of demented perversion that it actually takes. So it already violates like this human instinct to have compassion on animals. And then it takes it another level. And really this is about God saying, listen, your temptation to basically dabble in the religions of the place you're going is so strong that even something as ridiculous and dark and backwards as taking a baby goat, taking the time to get all the milk, this is a long process that God's like, listen, it's all dark and this is what darkness does. And don't dabble with that because those religions will destroy you. Follow me and you'll have life. And so, yeah, it was just a dark practice. So here's a question for you guys. What are practices that are explicitly religious that Christians are tempted to dabble in that are from either a different religious system or different religion in general? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I could tell a story. When I was in college, I lived in a suite with other guys. You know, we all had our different rooms, and I was the only Christian or the only, evangelical Christian, like let's just call it that, in this group. And the group of guys wanted to, in the middle of our suite, get a Ouija board out and, start using it and whatever that looks like. And, oh, this is fun. This is funny. Like it's not a big deal, right? But I understood that this has connections to the occult, and I was like very uncomfortable with it. And I essentially said, like, I can't let you guys do that in here, right? And there was a temptation for me to just like kind of go along with the flow, like this is what the group wants to do. Okay, yeah, I guess that's fine. But yeah, I just was not comfortable with that happening in our dorm room.
Yeah, this actually might be, you asked a question at the beginning when we first got in here, and it actually might be more common than we think. I mean, if you think about anything that we dabble into the spirit world in order to tap into a strength or a power, which is exactly what this is all about,
Totally,
right?
yeah.
Just tap into a power that we think we need or we don't have now. Anything that takes our reliance on something else and off of God's got our future, don't worry about it, would go into this category, like what, horoscopes or speaking with the dead. I mean, that's one, I don't know if you remember, but there used to be shows on TV where these guys could speak to the dead and people would come in and they were extremely good at it. They were probably shysters, that were able to, look at somebody and get, or maybe they were actually, speaking with spiritual world. But we know that to be absent from the body is to be absent from this. I mean, you're gone.
Yep.
Right.
And so if they're talking to somebody, it's not God.
Yep.
And so anytime you dabble into these kinds of things, and I think that might be why it's in there 3 times.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, especially, it's like, this takes a lot of time to get that much milk to do the boiling. There's a devotion to get into this in some level where you are spiritually bereft, where you need to tap into something where you are not able to trust God for.
Yeah, the amount of intentionality in that is crazy. Like when Jesus, the table turning event, and he's like has a whip or whatever. It's interesting because the text says that he didn't just show up with a whip. He went, saw it, left, made a whip, came back. And it's like that level of intentionality. I think we forget like all of these things, how much work it takes. You know? I remember I was like 9 or 10 years old, and Mike's house down the road is 6 houses down from me. And he would regularly have Ouija boards, and I would never do it because my mom was like very clear, like, don't touch that. Well, they had a seance one day, and nobody knew what they were doing. It was more like get some candles, everybody sit in a circle, and everybody just chant, right?
Dabble.
And I remember I sat there, and I was like so uncomfortable, and I didn't do anything. And then I just had to get up and leave because my spirit was just so like, but my mother's voice was in my head saying,
good for you,
like, don't ever do that. And so she had a list of things that like were in my brain, like these are evil practices. But all these kids, they didn't know any better.
Right. And I think that's
spiritual.
It's an effort of the evil one to tap into the innocence of our children.
Totally.
And once that door gets open, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've talked with several people who have challenges with faith, trusting God, or even challenges with demonic presence in one way or another.
Draw it back,
and you can always draw it back to playing with chanting in mirrors or whatever it is that they get into, including Ouija boards.
Sure, right.
That door just needs a little crack to open. The invitation is out there, and it's hard to say what comes in the doors.
Yep. This applies to neighbor laws because you're not supposed to take mice and release them out into the woods.
Let's make that a law.
That's right.
Make that a law, right?
I'm glad you're not my neighbor.
Yes. Sorry, Tom. Love you.
Yeah. Well, it's been a privilege having you with us. We've enjoyed talking about this. Hopefully it's been helpful to you. Join us next time as we tackle another question on our Sermon Q&As.